Immigration was one of the biggest concerns during the 2024 election, and immigration has been one of the biggest issues that Chicago has faced during the past few years. In fact, Chicago has seen nearly 50,000 immigrants bust to their city from Texas since Biden and Harris lifted restrictions. Only New York City saw a higher number. It's an issue because once the immigrants landed in Chicago, there was nowhere for them to go, and it went hand in hand with another major problem. Homelessness across the U.S. is seeing a record high, and it's more present than anywhere else in the large coastal cities. Away from the coasts, however, it's probably more significant in Chicago than anywhere else. Before the DNC came into town, there were quite a few tent cities in the West Loop area, but the city forced them out into other neighborhoods in town before the big event, seemingly so that the extent of the problem could be hidden. Well, I drove around several areas in the Loop where you could check out homeless camps earlier in 2024, and in late October, there were none to be seen. If you check out some of the city parks in the neighborhoods, however, you're more than likely to see some of the homeless tents. This is Gompers Park, situated in the northern part of the city. It has one of the larger homeless camps in all of Chicago. If you do a search for it, you'll see dozens of articles talking about how residents in the surrounding neighborhoods want the homeless encampment removed. People are complaining about how the homeless attract crime and other unwanted problems. City officials responded by saying that while they don't plan on clearing out the park this year, in 2024, they're committed to finding housing for the homeless on an individual basis. The problem is that the homeless camp has been here for a long time at this point, and residents are growing impatient and they want something done about it as soon as possible. The guy in this picture who's wearing a mask didn't want to share his name, but he had to be escorted out because he was losing his cool at an hour-long meeting over the matter at a local church in early October. Others throughout the meeting were booing city officials, just like they have been with the Chicago Bears offense for the last 40 years.
What up, Matt Eberflus?
This gentleman in the blue shirt voiced how he was unhappy about how illegal migrants were getting any kind of financial aid from the city. Chicago Chief Homelessness Officer Cindy Soto was quick to counter by saying, "We respect people for who they are, no matter their walk of life. They are called undocumented people," continuing to say that asylum seekers were in the city and country legally, in which Soto's response was met by boos from the crowd. Keep in mind that these are Chicago residents booing that, which kind of says something. There's even a petition from the Restore Gompers Park Coalition that has over 450 signatures asking for the homeless camp to be removed. Apparently, Chicago has a plan called the Accelerated Moving Event, which is a rapid rehousing program. However, the city is struggling to find funding for such a thing. The city spends about $30,000 over a 24-month span per household when someone is enrolled in the city's support services. The city claims to support 1,888 households through its services at any given time, which equals about $2,360,000 a month in handouts. While the city is struggling to find funds to find homes for all of the homeless in Chicago, some say that the city would have had the funds if they would have passed the Bring Chicago Home ordinance. The ordinance was a big deal in this city, and it would have raised the one-time fee on property sales of over $1 million, while also lowering it on cheaper homes and buildings. Only 3 of the 6 voting precincts that either border or include portions of Gompers Park voted in favor for Bring Chicago Home. Well, migrants, immigrants, illegal immigrants, asylum seekers, whatever you want to call them, they're all the same, and we all know what you're talking about. Gompers Park is just one of several parks throughout the city of Chicago where you can find scenes like this. And not all of the homeless here are migrants that were bussed from Texas either, which I think is an easy assumption to jump to, but migrants do make up a sizable portion of the homeless here, and the data backs it up as Chicago's homeless rate has tripled year over year since Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been busing migrants to the country's sanctuary cities. Here's another park with a lot of homelessness, Lincoln Park. And if you're not familiar with the city, Lincoln Park is right along the lakeshore north of the Loop. Drive up and down Lakeshore Drive between here and the Loop, and the famous drive is lined with homeless tents. Currently, there are 15 active migrant shelters in the city, but there used to be more. Chicago throughout the year has been closing their migrant shelters, most likely because it costs a lot of money to keep them running. The great journalism website Illinois Policy states that Chicago spent $299 million on the migrant crisis since 2022, and this headline was posted in May of 24, So, over a 2-year stretch, Chicago has spent $299 million on migrants, including $215 million during the Brandon Johnson era. Regardless of how you feel politically, whether you're left, right, red, blue, purple, green, independent, libertarian, Republican, or Democrat, it's not sustainable for a municipality of any size to be spending that much on handouts, and there needs to be another solution. The money has to come from somewhere, and it's likely just going to continue to be paid for by the Chicago and Illinois taxpayers unless a better plan comes in place. This is a fun editing trick, not gonna lie. Even for a city like Chicago, spending $299 million plus over a 2-year stretch is a lot of money. This early October 2024 article explains how the city closed its largest migrant shelter on the city's south side while closing another at the same time. I actually drove past that shelter 7 months prior in March, and this was the scene. The shelter off of Halsted once housed as many as 2,300 migrants. Chicago's Director of Public Affairs, Brian Berg, said in a statement that shelter residents would be offered placement in other city-run shelters, ensuring the continuity of care and services. An abandoned Holiday Inn near the Midway Airport is one of the facilities that unhoused migrants have been moving to. The Halsted Street shelter, however, made national news for concerns over overcrowding, mistreatment from staff, unsanitary conditions, and lack of access to proper food. I mean, yeah? Right? I mean, what do you expect? Of course conditions at a homeless migrant shelter housing 2,300 are going to be like that. I honestly wouldn't expect anything else. And on the flip side, you could spend $2 trillion on a grand resort migrant shelter in Chicago, and I guarantee you that people are going to find something to complain about and say that they don't have enough, or that conditions aren't perfect, like mold is going to grow in one of the showers because they don't think about cleaning it, and they're going to blame the city or something. Point is, a migrant shelter is not going to be a 5-star resort hotel. That's impossible. But it's better than living on the street. I mean, that's why they're all trying to get a bed to sleep on in one of the shelters, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm insensitive. Maybe that's why YouTube only shows 90,000 of my actual 900,000 subscribers, because I'm just some insensitive red ass. And if you're also an insensitive red ass, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any future videos. But to me, it shouldn't be a surprise that conditions at an overcrowded homeless migrant shelter would be less than desirable. Lastly, there was once a big push led by the city to place a huge homeless encampment in the city's Brighton Park neighborhood. At the northwest corner of California and 38th Street is a large vacant lot. Chicago wanted to turn it into the city's largest tent city by placing hundreds of winterized homeless tents so that they could move the majority of the city's homeless to this location. In theory, that plan would have cleared the majority of the homeless tents in the city's downtown and touristy areas. The city even paid to put up lights, the city paid for construction crews to level the ground and replace the dirt, with it all being topped off with military-grade tents to house the homeless migrants. Of course, the residents of the Brighton Park neighborhood didn't want it because nobody wants a homeless camp in their backyard, so no matter where such a site was going to get put together by Chicago, people were likely going to be unhappy. Well, things were going forward as Mayor Johnson entered into a $29.3 million contract with a private security firm to build the winterized camp. Included amenities would have been buildings individually used for restrooms, showers, dry storage, refrigeration, dining, more restrooms, and more storage, and a pump trailer. Well, after the city spent $1 million on the setup for this camp, the state of Illinois put a stop to the project due to environmental concerns. IEPA stated that there is insufficient soil sampling to determine whether or not the site would have been safe for people to live. So the city basically wasted $1 million on setting things up, only to call it quits. Well, a few years ago I went to another city that is seeing similar, if not worse, problems with homeless migrants, that city being Denver, and you can see a video that I made on the Mile High City here. Peace.